Lowry,
Here.
Councilman Grimm,
I'm here.
Councilman Rodwald,
Here.
Councilwoman Nowakowski,
Here.
Councilman Cobb,
Here.
Councilwoman Eggleston,
Here.
and Vice Mayor Cook.
I'm here.
7 members present.
Thank you very much, ma'am. And moving on, tonight's invocation will be done by Vice Mayor Cook.
If you please bow your heads. Our Heavenly Father, please grant us the wisdom to do the right thing for the citizens of this community. Please protect our first responders, our troops overseas, our EMTs, our deputies, and our fire department. Above all, grant us the sincerity to be the people that we choose to be. Amen.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Cobb. And then we'll move on to the pledge. Mr. Grimm has the,
That was Mr. Cook.
or Mr. Cook, I'm sorry. Thank you, sir. All right, pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America.
and to the republic for which it stands, one
One
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Liberty and justice for all.
for all. Thank you, Mr. Grimm. All right, moving on. Let's see here. Action on the minutes, none. Communication. Mr. Bridge, would you like to introduce our guest this evening?
Yes, I'm going to let him in. He's been sitting in a waiting room. So I'd like to welcome Tim Schmollenberger from MKSK in Columbus, and let's give him a minute to. Hello, Mr. Schmollenberger, how you doing?
Computer.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello,
How you doing, sir? How you doing this evening?
Good. How are you guys?
I think we're all good. I just wanted to take a moment to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us tonight.
No problem.
So we
Glad I
have.
could
Yep.
join.
We have the entire New Carlisle City Council here, as well as some administrative staff, and this is a live meeting, so some of our citizens are watching on YouTube. Yeah, but it's my understanding that you had a presentation you wanted to share with us this evening?
I do. I thought I think how we had shared with you guys, kind of our little short quals package that we had set out. Just kind of, because it shows the pool projects that we've been involved in. And then I added to it this afternoon to kind of pick a project and just show the process a little more, just to kind of give you an idea of maybe the process that you guys may be considering embarking on. Just kind of see the whole thing and how kind of a costing, early planning exercise, goes about to try and budget for for a pool replacement or pool improvements, to whatever level that that you need to achieve from that.
Well, that all sounds fantastic. Are you familiar with how to share your screen in Zoom?
I believe so. I jump between Teams and Zoom all the time here, so I'll see if I can. I see the green arrow to share the screen here.
Yes.
So I am going to jump on. Let's see here. There we go. There's that one. Here we go. Okay, here it comes. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
We can.
Yes.
Great. And everybody can hear me fine?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, perfect. I'll breeze through this since you guys obviously have reviewed this. And we'll just kind of go from there on it. So let me get on here. Ooh, good. Got the shrink going on here. So the firm I'm with is MKSK. I was one of the founders of the firm. We're landscape architects and urban planners. And so a lot of our projects start with planning, right? Where you're, looking at, what's trying to be achieved, what lands, are you looking at, what are the facilities, whether existing or proposed, and how they all, work together. That's essentially what we do. And this is probably our most famous project is the riverfront in Columbus, where we created a whole bunch of green space, out of basically a dilapidated river and green space in there. But we primarily work, in parks, urban areas, pools, recreation centers, streetscapes, anything that's, city type development. And so obviously you read through all this stuff. We're a pretty good sized firm. We're about 80 people right now in about 6 offices around town here. So this is me. I've been at this for roughly 40 years. Came out of Ohio State. Landscape architect. These are just a listing of the project, or the pool projects and spray grounds that I've been involved in over the years from that. And probably the first project I'll show here is Grandview Municipal Pool, because it's a smaller scale pool and it was on a pretty tight site. It was only about a 2-acre site. Your site is about 3 acres from what I can tell. Now this was a complete rebuild of a pool complex. Their pool was it was leaking water like at 3,000 gallons a day, and so they had to finally pull the trigger to replace it. And we went through a public process, which most pools now we take them through a public process so that you can get real input from the public. What is it that they desire in a new pool? And so that's kind of the big effort these days is to do that public process. You're obviously sharing concepts here. So this here's how the pool kind of looked when it was being designed from a plan standpoint, how it fit onto the site. It was actually very close to that when it was implemented. As you look at the image here, but this was all new buildings, new parking, new pool. It was basically everything wall to wall, on it. And just to give you kind of an idea, this was completed in 17, and the cost was about 6.4 million. So that was for everything. The Bexley Pool, which is a suburb of Columbus, was a replacement as well. But what was nice is it was on a site that had a park around it. So you can see, from the photos that the landscape around the pool was existing. So like it had always been there, which is kind of nice. So whenever we have that opportunity, we try and work within that type of facility. You'll get into that. I was asking questions of Howie earlier about the existing site and is it the thought to stay on the existing site or to look at other sites within the city, depending on what your long range plans may be. This is a pool for Upper Arlington. They've got several pools in their community. This one was one of the first pools, as it was done in 2005, where it had a zero beach, right, where you could walk in. It had a play structure in the pool, dive well, swim lanes, lazy, kind of a lazy river in it. So it was more of an entertainment pool, but it could also host swim meets because it was striped for and built to aquatic standards. City of Athens pool. This was completed in 18. This is relatively new. The City of Athens, which this is the pool that I actually have expanded upon, and will show you kind of the process that we took them through and some of the exhibits that went through. But essentially, this pool was a complete replacement as well. The only issue is it was in a floodplain, so you had to. They were always at risk of having a river flow into the pool, thus contaminating the pool and damaging the equipment. So they wanted to raise the pool site, and so we ended up raising about 2.5 feet to get it out of the floodplain risk zone from that end. And we'll share a little bit more of the public public process on that because it was quite interesting. These two pools, Maryland and Dodge Park, are very similar. They were two Columbus pools that Columbus got behind in their pool replacement and maintenance. And they got to a point where they needed to replace about 5 pools in about a 4 to 6 year time frame. They were, all over 40 to 50 years old and having a lot of issues with it. And this particular pool was one of the site was one of the first pools ever built in Columbus. And I had to chuckle when we dug back into history. They built this first pool back in the early 1900s for roughly $5,000, I think, when we looked it up in the historical information. But needless to say, this pool cost a little more. But again, you can see, the various shapes and program elements on these pools. They're, like I said, they're pretty much dictated from what the public is after. And then we work with an aquatics consultant, the actual pool engineer, to get the pool engineered and size for, budget, et cetera. Obviously, each of these teams has an architect involved that does the buildings. We have, engineers that would be on the team as well to handle, drainage, utilities, et cetera. And so we can lead, we can be a sub. We've done it in a number of different ways. It just really depends on what's best for the client and what they're trying to achieve. Dodge Park was a similar pool as well. You can see its proximity to downtown. Downtown's in the upper right-hand corner of the photo there. And again, this was one of the, I call it new pools. And when I say, new pools, the, similar to your pool and similar to Columbus's previous pools, most pools were big rectangles or squares. And now we're down 40, 50 years later, and pools have taken on a more custom design approach because you can actually end up with less water. So it's less maintenance for the pools. Also less to construct them because they're less water, but they're highly crafted to the users. You can see in this we got lap lanes for competition swimming. You got open swimming. You have a kind of a young children's area with a play piece in the water. You have slides that drop down into a splash pool, and then the diving wells are separate, which is the photo on the left. And the reason that the diving wells tend to be separate now is the bottom transition from a deep area to the more shallow areas of the pools eats up pool space, right? And it's an area where it's too deep to stand, it's sloping, and it's water that is not highly programmed. And so you end up maintaining that part of the pool with little use on it. But when you separate the dive well from that, you don't have the transitions, by the Ohio code, Board of Health code. And so you can spend, usable water elsewhere. And so it makes your pools overall smaller, than the pools of 40 and 50 years ago. And so, here is, here's kind of diving into the detail of the Athens pool. Here's I'm going to kind of blow through some of these features of pools these days, just to give you kind of an idea. Shade is big. Shade in the water is becoming bigger. So you can see these large umbrellas are close to the pool. So, a mom, or a dad, can get a young child, in the water, but yet still be in the shade, right? Not burn up in the sun. And so this is just one way to do it. This is also a zero beach. You can see how the water laps up like a beach on it. And you can see a lot of people just like to sit in the water at whatever depth they want as it goes down. So these are a very popular feature, of new pools these days. Then there's kind of the open recreation, kind of swimming, cooling off, sitting against the wall. Sometimes there's seat benches, that we would build into the pool. And then another feature that you're seeing is spray zones where there's no standing water. And in this particular pool, most pools run from Memorial Day to Labor Day. And obviously it's hot before then and it's hot after then. And so this, at Athens Pool, they wanted to still have a cooling off zone, which we made a spray zone. And there's no standing water, so there's no need to lifeguard it. And we fenced it so that it could be, during the pool season, it's only open to the pool. But when the pool closes, there's gates to the right of the photo here that is open to the park, the adjacent park that's around it. And so when the pool's closed for the year, you can use the spray zone, or the public can use the spray zone for free to cool off, and that's usually the month prior to the pool opening and the month after. And so then they found that to be kind of a nice feature from that. This here's Grandview. This is a 2-acre site. Yours is 3. Kind of give you an idea. And really, the secret to these things are about the site plan. So when you look at this site plan, you can see it's pretty efficient, and it's about lawn space, it's about deck space, shade. You can see the number of umbrellas they went in with. It's certainly about parking. They had a lot of on-street parking here, so their parking didn't have to be very large from that, but and it had its zero beach and all that stuff as well. So a lot of the features were wrapped into this. This pool had an attached tot play, which is just here to the left. So for the toddlers, the community, they didn't want to be separated by a toddler pool that's behind its own fence, etc. They wanted it really attached to the main pool. And so there's a bench, as you can see on the main pool, and then inside the toddlers can be with their parents or play on their own, but not get access to the large pool. This actually works out pretty well from that. Now this is also filtered on a separate system, right? Because accidents happen with toddlers, and you don't want those accidents taking down your main pool. So hence why you see it separated. It looks like it's the same water, but it's really a whole separate system within that. And so this here is the you can see this is their zero beach. It had some geysers in it, kind of almost like a water park, just to give it a little more activity from that end. And then their dive well, this is the other way you can handle a dive well. We didn't want to have a separate system for the dive well, so we connected it with a small transition piece of water here, not the whole length of the pool, just this small piece of transition here. So that odd depth of water is only in this area here, and that's how they chose to do it. Grandview also chose to hang on to their high dive, so they had 2 low dives and a high dive. Many pools are shying away from the high dive board and just not providing it anymore from that. And so with that, I'm going to rip into the process here. This here was a presentation that we gave to their council when the process had boiled the pool down to 2 options. And I'll show you the 2 options, but the issue here was the first meeting that we had with the public. The city said they had $7 million to spend on a new pool, everything included, no ifs, ands, or buts, right? And so the first meeting, the public, a pretty good chunk of them stood up and said, this is great, but we want an indoor pool. And they didn't want to talk about the outdoor pool. And we're like, well, we're here to help you through an outdoor pool design because, the city only has $7 million. And the minimum price tag for an indoor pool is $25 million because you're buying a building as well from that. And so we ended up spending most of the first meeting talking through that. And so there's certainly their long range plan was to, acquire an indoor pool. And luckily, where the pool existed was adjacent to essentially a new rec center within the last like 5 years they had built. And the rec center, while they had contemplated an indoor pool, again, it wasn't in the budget, for that first round, but they had plenty of space where they could do it. So during that process, we actually worked with the architect and designed where an indoor pool could be attached, logically to the existing rec center. So it got onto a plan so they can start to save dollars for it, and they obviously could visualize it, to help sell the idea to the greater public from that end. So that once we did that, then that enabled them to move forward with the outdoor pool process, and they were a much happier public when they got started. So this here's the city of Athens. You can see their existing pool on the left. You can see the rec center, on the right. But the floodplain from the river goes all the way up to within about 20 feet of that building and to within the pool deck of the pool area. Everything to the lower side of the sheet was all floodplain, so it could go underwater when the river came up. And there's a community engagement process. These are the kind of the process broken down into essentially five categories: community engagement, schematic design, client engagement, design development, construction documents, and then construction administration, where essentially you build the project after you get it built, or bid from that end. And then these were basically the goals and the programs that came out of the public meeting, boiled down into about 10, 12 bullet points from that. And so this is what everything was measured against as we went forward. And then these are some of the images that we used to help them determine their program from that. And so there's obviously shallow zero entry areas, diving, lap lane considerations. Swim teams are a big voice, but what we have to watch out for is the public. They're not as organized as a swim team, right? And so the voices of the swim teams may seem louder, in which in reality it's usually the public, that have that are obviously more of the users of for summertime use, from that end. And so we try and work that out through the whole public process. We obviously talk through depth considerations and by age groups, right? And so the depth of the pool is driven a lot by the age group uses. The environment that the pool is sitting in. A lot of the pools are in parks, right, or adjacent to schools, or adjacent to rec centers. And so, the environment around it, can obviously, influence things as well. Again, you can see kind of the leanings towards shade, right? Incorporating shade structures, either over shallow area pools or just in general, right? To provide shade for the public. Slides are a big draw, and you can do slides that drop into the pool. You can also do slides that just drop into a trough of water and not have to buy the pool for that as well. That saves dollars as well. And it's just as fun from the slide standpoint. You can obviously have equipment within the water, and geysers and jets and that kind of stuff. And then if you want to go a little more adventure, you can certainly take some part of the pool and you can have climbing walls that are either temporary or permanent that utilize the deep end of the pool or the dive well, and it's kind of switched off by its use, diving for a while, climbing for a while, etc. Then there's also the float toys and nets, cargo nets that you can hang on to. So it's kind of a challenge course to get across the pool, from that end. So these were all elements that for Athens, this was high on their list of that. And so there were two sites that were, within the project. One was to the east side of the rec center, a whole new site. And this is what that configuration looked like, because again, they could utilize an existing parking lot that, you know, helped save them dollars from that. But this site, we would have had to filled more to be able to get the pool up out of the floodplain. Option two was utilizing the existing site where the pool was at, but still raising it. But we only had to raise it about 2.5 feet to make it safe from flood prone zone. And in the end, this ended up being the more cost-effective solution. So the city chose this direction on it. And you can see, you know, this isn't really exactly what got built, but it's darn close. Like the pool dive well got actually flipped 180 degrees. The zero beach is about right. The splash zone's about right. The top pool's about right from that. But from this point forward, you know, council said, yes, we like this one based on the costs. And here were the costs. And if you kind of zoom in, this is a pretty detailed estimate where, you know, we go through, we talk about, you know, demolition, grading, right? We treat it, even though it's at a schematic level, we treat it like, you know, we're trying to read into the estimate to make sure that, you know, we're covering everything that, you know, we know of on it. So the aquatics are broken down. And like, for instance, when I was talking to Howie earlier today, you know, your current pool is roughly 8,200 square feet. If you were to replace that in today's dollars, depending on, you know, what's in it, it would be somewhere between about 1.25 and about 1.4 to replace that pool, completely based on today's dollars. And so that's the pool and the equipment. But that's not the buildings, that's not the deck, that's not the site, that's just the straight pool. You know, applying that kind of $165 a square foot of water surface area is what we found over the last 5 years or so. Tends to be, you know, a good average for the pool. So hence why you have to estimate in all the other elements, you know, that are illustrated, you know, in this early SD estimate. And, you know, I was actually kind of, I'd forgotten that we had at that point early in the process at SD had estimated about 6.5 on it, and the project actually came in about right at 6.6 million. Now the city actually added a little bit more program from the SD phase going forward. They wanted some other features on the site, and that added about 100 grand to it. But we're pretty confident that we can be pretty accurate, you know, early in the process on it. You can also, you know, kind of flipping over to your, you know, to your pool now here, and I think I have to shell out to another. You're not seeing my. Let's see here. Let's see. Oh, hang on. Yeah. Can you guys see the aerial of your pool?
No.
No.
Okay. Let me stop the share, and then I'll go back in again and pick the next one, and it should pop up now.
Got
Are you
it.
seeing your pool?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. Great. So when I was talking to Howie earlier, he said that you guys had just put some work into the bathhouse a couple years ago, I guess, and from that end. So you may be doing your pool, keeping your bathhouse, doing a new mechanical area, right? You know, you can certainly piece parts this. We did a project for the city of Columbus where their bathhouse was falling down, but their pool still had about 5 years on it. And so we actually went in and replaced the bathhouse. We master planned for the future pool based on the information they had at the time, and then located the bathhouse, you know, in its future location that would accommodate the future pool, right? Because they moved some things around, but it would also continue to work for the current pool from that. So we can certainly plan for a multiple phase, you know, improvement like that, depending on budget, right? Approach, site, et cetera, from that. So on aquatics, anything's game with that. It just really what best fits your community, what best fits your community budget with that. And so we spoke briefly about your current site. Obviously, your current site is a pretty good site, 3 acres. You've got ancillary use on it. I think there was some discussion that maybe you would move the pool site, as an option. You certainly can. It will likely cost more, right? Because you're going to have new utilities, new, obviously you're starting from scratch, right? If you're going to a whole new site. So most pool sites end up landing back in the exact same spot, but just a completely different configuration typically within it. It tends to be the most cost-effective approach, at least that we've found in the last 10 years or so. So with that, I'll stop talking and I'll kind of open it up to questions that that you guys may have.
All right, thank you, sir. Can we go back to this where we can see everybody?
We sure can. I'll stop the share.
Just so thank you.
Perfect.
All right. Any comments or questions, council or administration?
Cool.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Roadball.
Now, Tim, you said it would cost about 1.5 million to replace the current pool as is with the equipment only?
Yes,
Okay.
and where I got that from is, we have found that a square foot of water, when we budget pools, is between typically $150 and $175, $175 per square foot of pool surface area. And that's the pool shell and the equipment, right? But it's not the building that the equipment sits in.
Yep.
And it's not the pool deck or the landscape around it.
Yep. Yes, sir.
Right? So,
Yes, sir.
and that has tracked on, at least the last 5 or 6 pools that we've done.
Okay.
Dive wells tend to run a little more. They can tend to go up to about 200 a foot, depending if you're going high dive or low dives, because of it's.
Yep. All right. Thank you.
Sure thing.
Anyone else? Yeah, I had one, and I don't know if you and Mr. Kitco had talked about it. I was just curious if you guys did or what your thoughts are on it. Howie, did you guys talk about the water table with our site and how that is played into things for city maintenance on the pool?
I had just mentioned to Tim that it does sit in a water table, but I think he might have some information that, probably we're maybe more worried about it than it really needs to be, but he might be able to give you a quick answer.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank
Yeah, I guess from what I understand from Howie earlier is that the pool shell is probably approaching close to 55 to 60 years old. And most pool shells, the vessels, last anywhere between 40 and 50 years. So you guys are likely on borrowed time. And I know Howie mentioned to me about a potential of a liner approach, which is a PVC liner, which a lot of communities do that. But I'd be a little worried just because of the age of the shell that I think you're past that point, at this time. Obviously, you'd have to have an inspection, right, just to see. But every time that we've looked at a pool that's, anywhere between 40 and 60, the concrete it's ready to be replaced, at that point. We've not found one that has gone any longer than that. In fact, we're replacing a pool right now in Dublin that the shell is only 35 years old. It had a poor concrete bottom in it, and it didn't last. And so they are going the route of replacing it, unfortunately.
But as far as this, like where our pool sets with that water table, I mean, even let's just say for conversation's sake, we, someday the city decides to do something with, replacing that shell or the pool
Yes.
or whatever it may be. Do you guys have techniques or procedures that won't make that a problem if it was to be rebuilt there?
Yeah, it just depends on where the water table's at, right? The first thing we'd probably, want to do is have some soil borings taken just to find out where the water table is within it. And because that may necessitate, well, do we raise the pool to make sure the deep end is out of it? Or the majority of the pool. I mean, it's not uncommon that the deep area, diving well, is in the water table. We did one for Columbus that had a similar issue, and it ended up being a stainless wall, concrete bottom pool. And to resolve that, the engineers put a wet well next to it, and basically just the wet well keeps the water from building up in it. Now the pool can have water on the outside of it when it's full. It doesn't matter. It's only when you empty it is when that becomes, an issue with it typically, right? Because, you can actually float a pool, if the relief valve in the bottom, doesn't let go from that. And so if it's close, let's say it ends up only, a couple feet in the water table. If we could raise the pool area or the elevation where the pool's at to try and get it more out of the water table, we would likely suggest doing it because it just makes less maintenance long-term for you.
Or if the city was going to go that direction, or maybe change the layout of the pool or eliminate the deep end altogether.
Correct. You could certainly do that. Yeah, let's say the water table is down, 8 feet, right? Well, most pools, they don't really exceed, 5 feet for a public pool for open swim, and even for competitive swimming, right? It's typically, 5 foot is because it's usable for a lot of people, at that depth from that. So yeah, those are all program decisions. But I guess, I wouldn't let a water table issue affect your program. If you don't want it to, because that can be engineered for.
Right. Okay, great. Thank you. Mr. Vice Mayor, did you have your hand up? I couldn't tell. No? Okay. Derek, go ahead, sir. You're muted. Don't forget.
All right, Tim, the liner, what would happen if the liner with the concrete, what's the downfall to that?
The downfall would be, the concrete, you typically see spalling, right? Where the concrete gets water, water behind it and it starts spalling out, right? Well, the liner is just exactly that. It's like an adhered PVC liner. Think of like a lake liner, but it's essentially glued onto the concrete. So its integrity, basically, resides on the concrete. So if the concrete starts to heave and push out and spall, then it'll stretch the liner. It'll get kind of weird. Now, the warranty on those, they say, oh yeah, it's warranted for 10 years. Well, yeah, that's the liner, but that's not the concrete that it's adhered to, right? So you could have a failure in the concrete behind the liner, and the liner not fail, but your pool may become structurally, unsound just because the concrete's going to continue to deteriorate with that, just because of the age. So, I'd shared that with Howie earlier that just the age of that pool shell worries me. Now, I'll give you another option too. There was a pool in actually the neighborhood that I live in. It was a privately owned pool before it went public. City bought it. They built, and it was a big pool, right? Like I said, old pools tend to be large. Well, they built a pool inside the old pool, a brand new pool. And so the old pool was basically buried, but it had a new pool built inside of it from that. And they expanded it as well. So there's all kinds of things you can do like that. Again, depending on budgets, depending on program, what your long-term goals are with that. So, we've seen a lot of, different methodologies, work with things like that.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else?
I'll let Gecko guys have a follow-up.
Just real quick, and it is on the liner. We did discuss a little bit about the liner, and I shared the actual paperwork a little bit with him on warranty and stuff. And we did finalize it. Basically, they'll cover everything via warranty. However, we do have spalling and we do have sections of the deep well that do have issues and push. And the first thing that it's not a guarantee, but they could come in and look at that and say, you know, that concrete, it's still here, but the concrete shifted and now it's going to create issues and they may not cover it. So we're kind of in that middle of unknowns with the liner. But that's all I got.
Thank you, sir. Go ahead, Mr. Bridge, sorry.
Mr. Schmollenberger, are we saying your last name correctly?
You are. That's pretty good.
Hey, thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I think I'm going to discuss with council what their next steps and where they wish to be. But if we wanted to hire your firm to do what we're calling a feasibility study, hey, you go to maybe do your water samples to give them a good complete picture of can that pool even be rebuilt, maybe redesign it just a little bit, just give council options so they can actually take that and go with it. What does that step process look like?
Usually what we'll do is, well, especially like if you're not ready to involve the public yet, let's say you want to, just a kind of an in-house quick study. What do you think this should be? How something would lay out on that site, like, just to save time and dollars and stuff, right? We could certainly use, a previous pool that maybe, from another city that, that at least meets your program, right? And then show how it could fit on that site, what we would rework, then to try and, get a cost going, right? To see where it would lay, especially if you're going to like save a bathhouse for a couple of years, right? Not look at replacing that for another 5 or 10. It just depends on, the level of improvements that you want to do. Or if you want to start over from scratch and scrape it all and start over, what would that look like, right? And a lot of times, we'll do feasibility concepts like that where, and usually early on, we'll do those by hand, right? So they're hand drawn over trace over an aerial. And then scanned in, right? So the effort is about getting ideas out, getting costs out, right? So that you guys can make an informed decision of, are you, going to do it in pieces, parts, like phasing, right, to meet budgets, or is it better to scrape it and start over? And if you did, what would it look like, right? And what's the difference between the two approaches? Right. And we tend to do that a lot, right? Because, you're trying to decide what's the right approach, right, for you. And so we try and look at all those options. And usually what we'll do is we'll work hourly against kind of a fee range, right? So it says we think, for the process that you're talking about, we'll fall between here and here. And then we'll work hourly against that. And most times we come in under. Sometimes we'll go right to the top. It just depends on the scenarios and the program that that you'd like us to look at, but we tend to leave that in your hands to guide us, so you're in kind of complete control of that. Sure. And then once you do decide which direction you want to go, and you've got your funding together for whatever the improvement may be, then we would pull together a larger team, get you a revised proposal, right, that takes it all the way through construction for the most part. As far as documentation, administration, all that, right, and bidding. That pretty typical process after that. But early on, when it's feasibility, we try and concentrate on ideas and costs, for budgeting, and what the differences are, between it.
Okay, council, is anything specific that you would want him to look at since we're all here?
That's what I was going to ask him. If I don't know if he can give me a number. What kind of a ballpark range are we looking at just to come up with different options for our site to have you come up with something like that?
Yeah. My gut is we'd probably quote you a range of between 15 to 20,000, and we would work hourly against that. Hopefully, we'd be at the lower end of that, but that's what we've seen in past projects like City of Athens. That early on process was somewhere in that range. I've also done them for less. It just really depends on how clear in your mind that you think the program is for your community, right? What do you think, you want to achieve on it? And then obviously the whole public process, when you are ready to go would really determine that. But I think going in, we just want to make sure that, you have all the information, kind of eyes wide open going in, what it could mean.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, for me, this was a lot of good information. It was interesting to hear all the aspects of what you guys do and handle. It gives me a lot of what for me, what I would like to possibly see or what approach we would want to take. I don't know if maybe we just, let council sit on that overnight and maybe bring it up, whether we would want to have a work session to kind of discuss just this topic or, whatever. If council's got any thoughts on it, by all means. That's a lot to take in.
Tim, are
Okay.
you able to provide me with a, I'm sorry, Mr. Schmollenberger, able to provide me with a formal letter
Absolutely.
saying how much it's going to cost so I can have something to put in front of council for the feasibility?
Absolutely. Yeah, we put it in a proposal format. I get it to you guys for consideration.
That's awesome. And then I do have one last question. Have you or your firm ever done work where you take an existing pool, a traditional existing pool, and then rebuild it to just a splash pad?
Yeah, well, usually, yes. There's a lot of communities that are doing that. It's typically the communities that have multiple pools,
Mm-hmm.
and they're reducing the number of pools.
Oh, that makes sense.
So they're going to a splash pad. And then there's the hybrid like Athens, right? Because they really only have one pool. Now, granted, the university has a big indoor pool, right? So, and they open that to the public. And so that's how they're getting by with that. But they have a splash pad with their pool as well. I had shown, but there are communities. City of Columbus has done that now on 2 pool sites. They've eliminated the pool and have gone back in with a splash pad on one of them. And the other one, they just flat eliminated and turned it back into a park site. I think they put a basketball court or tennis courts in it.
Gotcha.
What kind of money is it to operate? I mean, obviously it depends on a splash pad on how big and elaborate it is, but I mean, a splash pad, other than the cost of the water, you've still got annual maintenance, correct?
Yeah. And I know from my conversation with Howie that your water department's been providing water to the pool, right? Well, because it's leaking out. And on splash pads, here's the key to them. If you have water that you're willing to use once and let it drain away, then you can eliminate all the filtration and recirculation in a splash pad. So you're using water right out of the tap. Those features tend to be the low flow features, so you're not using as much water, but they are incredibly easy to maintain because there's basically very little equipment with it. It's just the equipment and then the cost of water. And so, if you guys can justify that, you can do a splash pad for a lot less money on the maintenance side. It's about the same cost to build it, less all the filtration tanks, filtration equipment and tanks on it. So it's less to build, less to maintain long-term if you're throwing away, basically, use the water once and then send it down. Now we had a job we did in Michigan where we were using water like that, but we sent it to an irrigation tank for a golf course. And so the water was getting used on the golf course because it was actually flowing down and getting picked up in that system. And then they would pump it out to use on the golf course. So it was being used at least twice.
Oh, wow.
And so there's ways around that. You don't have to recirculate water for a spray pad. You can, but I'd say it's about 50-50. Communities that have water and don't have interdepartmental charges within them, they go that route because it's just a lot less equipment and a lot less cost to maintain.
Sure.
All right.
It's actually a good idea.
All right. Thank you. All right, council, any other questions? It sounds like if not, he's going to be putting together a little proposal towards us for us. So, all right. Well, I thank you for your time, sir. It was very interesting to hear everything you and your firm go over or do. It was very informative. So thank you very much for your time and taking time out of your great Monday to join us.
It's a Monday. All right. Yeah. I thank you everybody for listening to me for this time period.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Bye.
All right.
All right.
Very good.
Okay. So let's see. Back to, that took a lot of time. So we'll kind of do fast forward here. City manager's report, none. Comments from members of the public. Mr. Bridge.
Let me get her going here. We're refreshing the page. I do not have any additional emails.
All right. Thank you, sir. Committee reports, none tonight. Resolutions, none. Ordinances, none. Other business, legislation discussion.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
yes.
All right. So the resolutions we have up for action tonight there are two of them, even though resolutions generally get introduced and voted on at the same time. There is one of those that actually introduced this evening, but will not be voted on until 4 or 5. So that is the first one up for tonight is a resolution authorizing the sale of unneeded property. That is due to some guns that have been in storage at the East office that we're wishing that council approves us to sell to get a credit back. We also have a resolution amending resolution 2025R, which was when council approved the lump sum bonus to employees for the massive BWC rebates we got. We inadvertently did overlook an employee, so we want to do the right thing and issue that bonus to him. But since it was passed by legislation, we are back in front of council to amend that legislation piece. And the ordinances that we just have one ordinance introduced tonight that we voted on at the 4-5 meeting, and that is a ordinance supplementing appropriations.
All right. Council, any questions, comments, discussion, feedback, all the above on any of these topics? It doesn't appear so. You've done such an excellent job, Mr. Bridge. You answered everyone's questions in 2 minutes.
I'll take it.
All right. Let's see. So down to other business. Any other discussions before we end the work session this evening? All right. Doesn't appear so. So with that being said,
Move to adjourn.
Second.
motion by Mr. Grimm, second by Ms. Eggleston to adjourn.
Vice Mayor Cook,
Yes.
Mayor Lowry,
Yes.
Councilman Grimm,
Yes.
Councilman Roadwald,
Yes.
Councilwoman Noakowski,
Yes.
Councilman Cobb,
Yes.
and Councilwoman Eggleston.
Yes.
Motion to adjourn accepted 7-0.
All right. We'll see everybody back at the